Edgar Lungu is dead, but he is not buried. He dies inside a quiet hospital room in Johannesburg, South Africa in June 2025.
News just in now. Former Zambian President Edgar Lungu has died.
Zambia's former president Edgar Lungu has died. His party, the Patriotic Front, made the announcement of the 68-year-old's death.
Machines hum softly. Doctors step back. At 68 years old, Zambia's former president takes his final breath far from the country he once ruled. His body is prepared, preserved, placed in waiting. What normally follows death does not begin. There is no funeral date, no procession, no grave prepared in Lusaka. Days pass, then weeks, then months. 6 months later, Edgar Lungu remains unburied. His body held in a foreign land while arguments replace mourning. Lawyers speak instead of priests. Courtrooms replace churches. Politics enters a space meant for silence. This is not a delay caused by distance or logistics. It is a delay caused by power. A former head of state lies between two claims, one made by blood, the other by the nation. His family demands a private farewell.
Because all they are saying in this document is that they want to exclusively repatriate the body to Zambia. They want the body to be handed over from the funeral home to the government. The family cannot only be present, and they'll be present on conditions or restrictions that the government may impose. Now, these two, if you will notice, are seeking to exclude the participation of the family in this process.
The state demands a national burial.
And if we look at Zambian law, there is clear judicial precedent stating that in the case of a person of significant national interest, the wishes of that person and even the family of that person must yield to the broader public interest. The law relating to burial rights provides for the applicant to be able to afford a state funeral and the burial in Lusaka.
Each side insists on dignity. Each side refuses to move. And as the dead wait, a country watches. This is the story of a burial that never happens, and the fierce dispute that keeps a nation suspended between grief and control. Edgar Lungu rises to power in 2015 after the death of President Michael Sata. He inherits a nation under pressure, economically strained, politically tense, uncertain about its future. He governs as a firm hand. Supporters see stability, critics see control. His presidency is marked by repeated confrontations with the opposition, restrictions on dissent, and growing economic hardship. At the center of his political life stands one rival, Hakainde Hichilema. They face each other across 3 elections. Each contest deepens the divide. In 2017, Hichilema is arrested after a political confrontation. The country holds its breath, trust fractures, politics becomes personal. In 2021, the rivalry reaches its end. Hichilema wins, Lungu loses power. The transfer is tense, but it holds. Lungu leaves office, but not politics. He remains present, vocal, defiant, suspicious of the new administration. The rivalry does not fade. It follows both men beyond office. Then in June 2025, Edgar Lungu dies. He is 68 years old. He dies in a hospital in Johannesburg, South Africa, while receiving specialized medical treatment. His death ends a turbulent political life, but not the tensions attached to it. Even in death, the rivalry lingers. Even in death, politics does not release him. A former president is gone, but the story does not end. Shortly after Lungu's death, the family prepares for a private burial in Johannesburg, according to what they say are Edgar Lungu's instructions. They say he did not want the current Zambian president to attend his funeral. They argue that Zambia's government wants him buried in Lusaka, not for tradition, but for political reasons. Makebi Zulu, the family spokesperson, states that Lungu's death should not be used as a PR stunt by the government of Zambia. He says the family wants to offer a dignified farewell, one free of political manipulation.
In our arguments, in the documents, we have said There are several authorities. Some authorities were cited in court, including by the lawyers for the state, where they are recognizing the rights of the widow, the rights of a deceased person. And our argument was that, listen, there's this right to dignity. It extends to the person who has died, but it's also that of the family. And the questions that the government will be, should have been answering in this case is whether or not the issue of the burial of President Chagwa Lungu would be dignified to the satisfaction of the family. Because the desire of the family in all this is one: how do we give President Edgar Chagwa Lungu a dignified send-off?
One source also claims that the family of Lungu fears that Hichilema wants to use his body for rituals to strengthen his political influence. But the Zambian government is firm. It argues that as a former president, Lungu belongs to the nation and not to a private family. They insist that Zambian law and tradition demand that he be buried at Embassy Park in Lusaka, the official burial site for presidents. This disagreement, personal versus national, sets the stage for a legal and diplomatic battle that will last for months. What begins as a disagreement soon turns into a formal legal battle. The Zambian government files an urgent application in the Pretoria High Court in South Africa, seeking to prevent the burial planned by the family and to compel the repatriation of Lungu's remains to Lusaka. On the day Lungu's private funeral is meant to happen, a court order unexpectedly halts the ceremony. Just hours before the service starts, the courtroom issues an emergency ruling. No burial can take place while the dispute remains unresolved. The judge's decision shocks those gathered at the cathedral. Mourners, clergy, and family members are left waiting outside. Inside the courtroom, lawyers argue fiercely about legal rights, national duties, and personal wishes. The government maintains its stance: a former president's funeral cannot be a private family matter if it affects the nation. Meanwhile, the family argues that excluding them from the arrangements denies them the right to respect Lungu's last wishes and the dignity owed to a father.
They can ignore Justice Mokgwatleng's judgment.
At the heart of this dispute is more than just burial logistics, it's political history. Lungu and his successor Hichilema were long political rivals. Their rivalry shaped Zambian politics for years. The family claims that Hichilema's presence at the funeral would be a betrayal of the late president's final wishes. The government counters that personal animosity cannot override national protocol. In its filings, Zambia's Attorney General argues that even if a president requested otherwise, the law allows state funerals to take precedence for national unity and respect. Some public commentators question whether the dispute is truly about dignity or whether it has become another chapter in the long-standing political divide between the Patriotic Front, Lungu's party, and the United Party for National Development, Hichilema's. As weeks turn into months, the legal battle deepens. The government seeks summary orders, the family files appeals. At one point, the High Court affirms that state funerals are matters of public interest and that personal wishes, even in a will, cannot outweigh national protocol. The family then escalates the case, refusing to give up its challenge. Lawyers debate whether Zambian law or South African law should apply, whether international protocols govern the remains of a foreign national, and whether the public interest supersedes private rights.
Can be overridden by a government. In this case, it happens to be a foreign government, but by a government. Now that, we say, is a fundamental problem. The second one is that a contract, my learned friend characterizes differently, over a dead body or over a corpse, is a recognized species of contract in South African law.
But there is a complicating factor, and that is that what we contend is that there is a foreign element present, and that the Zambian law should apply, considering all the connecting factors, and I will deal with that. And if we look at Zambian law, there is clear judicial precedent stating that in the case of a person of significant national interest, the wishes of that person and even the family of that person must yield to the broader public interest.
The Pretoria High Court even postpones applications indefinitely as tensions rise. Some commentators point out that this dispute has set unusual legal precedent, a situation where a former head of state remains unburied while courts rule on his remains. Five months after his death, Edgar Lungu's remains are still unburied. Negotiations continue, legal processes unfold, and public debate rages on. Political figures, civil organizations, and ordinary citizens all weigh in. Each voice adds more complexity to an already tangled situation. Some insist the family should have the final say. Others argue the state must honor national tradition. What seemed like a matter of simple burial becomes emblematic, a fight over memory, authority, and narrative. Amid legal arguments and political rhetoric, there is a human story often overlooked. A family grieving a father, a husband, and a leader they loved. A government seeking to honor a former leader while preserving national unity. Citizens caught between political factionalism and personal mourning. This dispute reveals how death, something universal, can become politicized, contested, and delayed. As of today, Edgar Lungu's final resting place remains undecided. His body waits. His legacy continues to spark debate. And a nation watches, reflecting on how leadership, law, and family intersect in the most profound moments of life and death. What does it mean to belong to a nation? Who gets to decide how a leader is honored? And when the disputes end, will peace follow? These are questions that remain unanswered, like the burial that never happened.